You ever wake up, check out your bank account or your Bitcoin wallet, and then go to see...
And it's gone.
Gone! Well, that's exactly what happened to thousands of Bank of America customers, just gone. Now, if that doesn't freak you out, I don't know what will, but it's not just Bank of America. First Republic, Silicon Valley Bank, and Signature Bank have already collapsed, and you don't have to take my word for it. We have Lawrence Lepard and Michael Saylor sounding the alarm as well, and they're very bullish. You're gonna want to stay until the finish, because today we're diving into the crazy economic data, the signs that we have like a looming run on the banks, and why trusting your money to any bank could leave you holding dust.
Dust? When? Dude.
What about Bitcoin? It's the exit ramp from this disaster, but only if you hold the real thing. Not an ETF, not an IOU, real Bitcoin in your own custody. So are you ready to secure your future? Or are you going to risk waking up to that zero balance? Welcome back, guys. I'm Rustin, head of news at Simply Bitcoin, and we have a whole lot to cover and get to. Send it!
This is the biggest stock and everything bubble in the history of the world, and it's going to, in my view, get bigger. But that doesn't mean that at some point it won't end. Right. And at some point there will be no buyers left. And when it starts to break, I mean, they can't handle a lower market. And when the stock market starts to break, the negative wealth effect, et cetera, is going to flow through to everything. And as James points out, in 08 and 2000, when we had those big market downturns, the deficit grew between 6 and 10% because, tax receipts come down from the stock gains and costs and social costs go up. So, we're running a big 7%, 6-7%, GDP deficit right now. Imagine when that doubles in size and then the bond market fails. And the only way to solve that is to go buy all the bonds. So, the Fed balance sheet goes from 7 trillion to take 36 and add it to 7, right? I mean, there's really an unbelievable train wreck coming at some point. But until that time, hey, the band is playing on the Titanic and everything looks fine.
The everything bubble is real and it's about to burst. Lawrence Lepard lays it out perfectly. This is the biggest stock, bond, and everything bubble in history. And when it bursts, there won't be any buyers left and it's going to be ugly. Like in 2008, when the financial system collapsed and the deficit skyrocketed. Now we're running a 7% GDP deficit. Imagine what happens when that doubles. Spoiler alert, the Fed prints money and inflation gets worse. Here's the truth. They're going to print their way out of every problem. It's like rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic. Meanwhile, you're stuck on the sinking ship unless you've already grabbed a lifeboat, like Bitcoin.
If you're trying to use money that requires banks, you can't trust the banks. You certainly can't trust the banks in Africa and South America and most of Asia. It used to be Americans thought they could trust American banks. Now they're realizing that they can't trust American banks. So the first order impact of the banking crisis is people think, well, maybe the money I had in the bank's going away, and so I ought to put it in a bank in cyberspace that isn't controlled by the government or by the bankers, and that's Bitcoin. The second order impact is the solution to the banking crisis is print more dollars. And if you print more dollars, the actual monetary inflation rate goes 10%, 15%, 20%. So you think, why do you think those bonds crashed? Because they're actually claims on dollars. Do you really want to hold $1 billion of Zimbabwe dollars? What if I offered you 10 billion Zimbabwe dollars? I mean, the answer is it's going to a nickel, okay? So if the paper currency keeps crashing, then you can't own anything that's currency related. You can't own a currency derivative. You need to own something that politicians can't print more of. Okay, well, that's oil. That's land. But the problem is, try hauling 100,000 barrels of oil from where you are to London, where you want to be. How are you going to do that? I'll give you $1 billion of land in Central Africa, and then someone takes over with machine guns and declares that everyone with large amounts of land now loses it. That happened in Zimbabwe. You're going to pick up the land on your back and carry it to France? So It's simple. If people lose faith in the banks, they lose faith in the currency. When they lose faith in the currency, they lose faith in the government. When you lose faith in the bank, the currency, and the government, and someone says, what can you trust? The answer is you can trust Bitcoin because you can custody your own asset, you can run your own node. And at the end of the day, even if the Chinese want to shut it down, they can't. If the Russians want to shut it down, they can't. If any nation state wants to shut it down, they can't. If the U.S. wanted to shut it down, they can't. And so everybody wants something that they can trust that is beyond the reach of a corrupt politician, a corrupt corporate executive, or they don't have to be corrupt. They can just be well-meaning, trying to do the right thing in a misguided fashion.
Do you guys remember when Bank of America's CEO Brian Moynihan, well, he said Bitcoin is speculative, you could wake up and it's worth zero. It's funny how that works, right? Because we just had thousands of Bank of America customers wake up, check their accounts, and saw zero. But here's why it all matters. Fractional reserve banking means your money is never really there. Banks are required to keep only a tiny fraction of your deposits. The rest, loaned out, invested, or gambled away in shady deals. So when a bank run happens, like at First Republic or SVB, you can kiss your savings goodbye. Bitcoin, on the other hand, doesn't play by those rules. When you hold Bitcoin, you hold your keys. It's real financial sovereignty. Michael Saylor said it best, you can't trust the banks. The only solution is Bitcoin, money that no government or no bank can control.
This is really out of control. I mean, this government is out of control. And you had a presidential debate where no questions were asked about the fiscal or economic, situation or balance sheet of the U.S. government. Nobody dares to go there. And yet, there's a train wreck coming. And I mean, I'm writing a book, and this is the topic of the book, right? That, you've got to actually hold assets which cannot be debased, because we know, based on prior history, there are, 50 years of example that if and when that train wreck occurs, it would look like the Great Depression in terms of a deflationary impulse. And then we know that the policy response would be, we are going to print whatever it takes. Just as the Fed balance sheet went from less than $1 trillion, 900 billion to, $3 trillion over 3 or 4 years with, QE and Bernanke. And then it went from 3 trillion to 9. It's come back to 7 under Powell. The next one's going to take the Fed balance sheet to 25. And at some point, the way, and I'm not suggesting hyperinflation is my base case, because it's not. It used to be a complete tail risk. I'm now thinking it's kind of a 10 or a 20% case. But the way that hyperinflation occurs is when people lose confidence in the currency and they say to themselves, just get me out of this currency. I know it's worthless. If the Fed comes in and buys the entire U.S. government bond market, which arguably it would have to do if the stock market went down 40% and the bond market sold off hard and interest rates went up a lot, you're on your way. That's a 200,000 plus Bitcoin price going to $1 million, and that's a $5,000 an ounce gold price.
And here's where it gets crazier. The Fed has one tool in its arsenal: print more money, and they're going to keep doing it until the system collapses. Lawrence Lepard breaks it down. The next phase could see the Fed's balance sheet explode to 25 trillion. That's what happens when the bond market fails and they start buying everything to keep the system afloat. Hyperinflation? It used to be like a tail risk, but now it's looking like a real possibility. When the world loses faith in the dollar, what's left? Real assets. But can you carry a barrel of oil across borders? Can you pack up your land and take it with you? No. The only thing left is Bitcoin. 21 million. Hard capped, untouchable by government or banks. And once the collapse starts, Bitcoin's price, it's going to go absolutely ballistic.
The only difference between the US dollar and the peso is, whereas it takes 20 years to lose your family's fortune in the peso, it takes about 90 years to lose your family's fortune in the dollar. My house in Miami Beach was $100,000 in 1930. It was appraised at $46 million a few years ago. Do the calculation. It's on a path to be worth $100 million, which means that the US dollar will have lost 99.9% of its value over 100 years. Warren Buffett knows this. Charlie Munger knows this. The bottom line there is your money in the bank isn't money. Okay, so the answer is you shouldn't have any money in a bank. You're basically losing 7% of all your wealth every year in a good year. If it's the dollar, you're losing 15% of your wealth in a not good year. If it's the dollar, you're absolutely losing all your money over the course of a decade. So that's kind of weak money. Awful money is developing world money, the Lebanese pound. The Lebanese pound got devalued. I mean, you would have lost all your money in 5 years if you had the pound. The strongest money, decent money, okay money was gold, but not great. The strongest money in the world is Bitcoin, because Bitcoin is absolutely capped at 21 million. It is global money. You could take $1 billion of Bitcoin across a border. You can transfer it to a counterparty, and no government can interdict that, and nobody can inflate that. So my answer there would be you can't trust any bank.
Let's talk about the signs. Warren Buffett, the Oracle of Omaha, just sold another 8 million shares of Bank of America stock. In total, he's dumped over $2 billion in shares, and on the same day, Bank of America customers saw zero balances in their accounts? Coincidence? I think no. Buffett knows the game. He's cashing out before the crash. And you should be thinking in the same way. Here's the thing. The US dollar isn't far behind. Over 90 years, the dollar has lost 99% of its value. Your savings, your paycheck, everything being inflated away. Meanwhile, Bitcoin supply is fixed at 21 million. And that's why Saylor says you shouldn't have money in a bank. It's being eroded by inflation every day. Real wealth? It's in assets that can't be printed, like Bitcoin.
This reminds me very much of 2019 and 2020 when Bitcoin was kind of stuck in the 5s and 10K range and gold was stuck at 1365, and gold broke out and then Bitcoin just came racing by. And so gold was up in that event. Gold was up, 50, 60, 70%. Bitcoin was up 300%. So to answer your question and to allay your concerns, the year's not over. And I'll say it here first. I think we'll see six figures this year, this calendar year. Yeah. And I think James would agree with us because he does a lot of good technical analysis. If you look at it, there's a bull flag forming with a downward slope. And what is it, James? 73?
Yeah, it's been forming for months now.
Right. And when it breaks 73, it's going to squirt to 100 like lickety split, don't you think?
Yeah. So if you pull up that flag, that's about right. Once it gets through that $70,000 level, it's going to have, like right now, where the flag, the trajectory of it is about 66,000. If it breaks through there, it's kind of interesting here. This has been a bull flag that's been forming for months here. Okay, this is the daily. So if you go to the weekly, it's easier to see. Oh, yeah. This has been forming for this long. Here's the flagpole right here. After we had the ETFs approved, and we had that, sell off, which was a fake out. You had this flagpole created, and now you have lower highs and lower lows that continue as you consolidate through here, right? So now, as we've consolidated, we keep consolidating. You could see just this last week, we bounced right off that flag. I mean, it's just incredible. We bounced right off of it. And It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy that traders look at this and they watch this and they say, okay, it's not quite ready yet. And so now here we are this week, starting today, we're down, But once it breaks through this level, which is about 66,000, then the next level is the all-time high. And that all-time high is what, 72 and change?
73-ish, yeah.
Yeah, 73,000. So once it breaks through that, then it's price discovery, and that's it. And you're kind of off to the
flags typically fly at half mass. So you add another 20 points, 24 points to that, and you easily get to, 80, high 80s, low 90s, and it'll overshoot probably into the 100,000 range. So
you guys are feeling bullish.
Oh, absolutely. It's just relax. It's all coming our way. This is without something, without an accident, without something, quote unquote, breaking. I mean, I think there's a high probability that sometime in the next 18 months, something serious will break. And, the bazookas will come out.
Now let's talk about what's next. James Lavish and Lawrence Lepard agree. Bitcoin is set to explode. The TA is showing a bull flag forming, looks like a cup and handle, and once Bitcoin breaks 66K, according to them, it's headed for price discovery. We're talking six figures, maybe even by the end of the year, and this is before any major black swan event hits. And I know that's crazy because maybe the things that have just been happening, this chain of events, it's just normal in clown world. So they're just like mini black swans. like shutting off the supply chains with a strike or the what have you in the Middle East. But here's the thing. We know something big is coming. Jobs data being revised downward, inflation is sticking around, and the inverted yield curve has hit over 700 days, something we've only seen before in 1929, right before the Great Depression. History tells us something is about to break, and when it does, Bitcoin's going to the moon. People used to trust their banks, but after the past few years...
What do you mean the bank is out of money? Insolvent? You only have enough cash for the next 3 customers!
A lot of that trust is gone. And when the next collapse hits, the government will print more money, devaluing everything in your bank account. So what can you trust? Bitcoin. With Bitcoin, you control your money. You custody your assets. No bank, no government, no corporation can take it away. It is the ultimate exit from this corrupt financial system. So ask yourself, do you want to be stuck in the banking collapse? Or do you want to hold the only asset that's outside their system? Because here's the truth. If you're still trusting the banks, you're playing a dangerous game. Take your financial sovereignty now. Buy real Bitcoin and get it off the exchanges. Don't wait for your account to show zero. Take control before it's too late. And if you need help with any of that, we got just the guys to get you covered. The masters of Bitcoin self-custody, the Bitcoin way. Guys, being that we live in clown world, it's pretty easy to understand the why Bitcoin, but over at the Bitcoin way, that's where you're going to learn how to Bitcoin. Check out their newly revamped website. If you're looking to become a master of Bitcoin self-custody, no one makes it easier. From setting up your first wallet node to inheritance planning to everything Bitcoin sovereignty, they got you covered. Hey, and if you're looking to get started, you can schedule a free 30-minute consultation with the Bitcoin way using that link in the show notes. Guys, if you're still keeping your wealth in fiat, in banks, or even worse, trusting a Bitcoin ETF, you are gambling with your future. Self-custody is the peaceful revolution. Hey, hope you guys like this one. Be sure to like, subscribe, give us a pamp, share that sound money gospel. And really, though, you might want to share this with everyone you know, because the clock is a-ticking. Are we in the middle of the greatest collapse in history? Let us know what you think below. Stay free, stay sovereign. I'll catch you all next time. Peace.
If you prefer to go down with the ship, you.